Welcome to Life in Red.
I've never had that voice happen before. I don't even know if that's going to show up. Wow. Okay. That took me by surprise.
First edit.
Jim, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for hopping on here.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to finally put the face to the name and actually get to talk to you. It's great to see you.
We've been friends on Twitter for the last little bit. And the best part about our Twitter friendship is it came over a bond on mustaches. And you have, for those who
mustaches unite us.
For those who aren't watching on YouTube and listening, Jim has a very beautiful, full-bodied mustache.
I like to put that in all of my social media. So I put, like meme maker and husband and all that, and owner of or mustache enthusiast or mustache wrangler. So, you know what I mean? It sounds kind of weird. I feel like I might be attracting the wrong attention sometimes, but
Usually when I grow a mustache, everyone's just like, oh yeah, you could be a porn star. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much.
I mean, but that's like the one thing. That's the one way that I could fit into that realm. I really got nothing else to take me there. So,
how, I love to ask this question, especially for people who aren't in Canada. You're in the States, and what I find so fascinating right now is here in Ontario, we are still in total lockdown. Like I cannot go to the store and buy socks. That it's not a thing. Whereas I was watching Vegas and Colorado play in the playoffs, and that Vegas had a full arena, 18,000 people. And I'm like, our two countries are so different right now. How has the pandemic been for you? And how are things now that it seems that America is pretty much over with it?
Yeah, I think it's a little, I think we're ending things a little prematurely. Let me take it back to the beginning of the pandemic for us. I had my fourth child in March of 2020. We made it out of the hospital about a week before the lockdown started. So, again, we've had babies. We know what it's like. Two of them are autistic. So we know the aspect of special needs. We have an 11-year-old. So it's not, we have a good range. We've done this before. It was by far the most stressful thing. We were kind of rushed to get out because there was, grumblings of COVID here and there. And, we got out, everything was fine. The birth went great. I got the time off from work and all those things. And I think within a week they were calling school. The school was calling us to come get the kids, come get my daughter because she was the only one going to school at the time. And, they're going to start shutting down schools and they're going to start, everything got crazy. And there was this air of fear. And like we talked about, I live in a tiny little town, but there's a lot of government employees here. So a lot of people will work for the Department of Defense, but live here, or they'll, commute from, I live in Culpeper, Virginia. If anybody's looking for a tiny town to ignore, I live in Culpeper and all that stuff happens in around Washington and Arlington and places like that. But yeah, there was definitely an air of fear. And, it was an odd experience because I was sitting down talking to a guy that was stocking tomatoes at the grocery store. And I was like, hey man, you may want to, I don't know if you're able to get to the news at all, but they're shutting schools down. And he's like, oh my God. And then, the whole toilet paper thing hit. I don't know if that was a global thing, but that was pretty scary to see people spazzing over toilet paper. But, it's largely been good, I guess. I'm what you call one of the, essential workers or sacrificial workers, depending on how you want to phrase that. The whole time my day job, I'm a firefighter. So we actually, though the hospital personnel, do work with people very directly that are ill, we have to go get them from the wild. So that tends to be, in my mind, a little more dangerous because we're usually packed in. And though where I work exactly in my county isn't the most urban or the most closely packed, we do spend a lot of time in close quarters with people. And it was odd to where these are guys I've worked with for probably 3 or 4 years. We sleep next to each other practically, but I have to wear a mask at all times. And you know what I mean? So it made it really weird. And then there was the, policies changing all the time. So that made it kind of weird. Obviously I'm sure everyone has their tales of woe through the time, through COVID, but it was definitely tough and definitely, a lot of time to work on the Unusual Buddah stuff. As far as, nobody, we had a scare at my station a couple times. A couple people got really sick. But other than that, it hasn't been. I'll put it this way: there are probably worse stories people could have of COVID, though mine is not great. I don't feel like I'm by anywhere close to the worst rendition of how it went. But it's scary to me that they are undoing things so fast here. I'm not saying we have to go maybe not as extreme as you guys are there in Canada, but I feel like there has to be like a medium. I feel like we are, somebody just decided like, fuck it, we're done. Like I don't feel like this anymore. Because we've got restaurants are opening, outdoor areas are optional again, and it's just insane the amount of undoing. And I understand it's good for the economy and whatever else, but it seems like a little soon. You know what I mean? They just told us to, we're still got to wear masks, but get your vaccine. And I don't know. It's just an odd dynamic.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Virginia is, I think it went Democrat, right? This last election, but traditionally it's kind of a swing state. Like it could.
Generally speaking, most of Northern Virginia is the bluer parts, and then everywhere south is the red parts. So they've been, I think, traditionally a purple state,
right?
But this time we're very went very blue.
I mean, and especially you work with the public, but what has been like, the response that you've seen from people? Because I'm always curious. Where I am, it's like we have like predominantly most people are very like pro-vaccine, believe in COVID and all that stuff. But we do have a large swath of people who are anti-vax and who are COVID's a conspiracy, all that type of stuff. We're not quite as bad as Alberta, but Ontario is rough in some patches because we're very, very rural, outside of Toronto and Ottawa and a couple of other southern cities here. What's it been like in Virginia? Has there been a lot of like protests, a lot of people not wearing masks, all that type of stuff? Or has it been pretty compliant?
So I feel like by and large it's been mostly pretty compliant. I know a lot around where I live, people are still wearing masks, even after the latest CDC guideline of you don't have to wear one if you're vaccinated and those kind of things. So I would say compliance is 50-50, but obviously they can't ask, nobody can ask to see your vax card, but they can. Businesses can, same thing with the, I don't know if you've ever heard, I'm sure it's similar in Canada, but like the no shirt, no shoes, no service thing. Mm-hmm. That's one of the signs that's very common to put on a store here. And they can add that to their little requirements to come in. So you have to wear a mask, you have to be, spaced out because no business here is obligated to serve you, I guess, if that makes sense. So businesses still have the right to, deny service for whatever they want.
Here it's mandated, not to cut you off, but
really
here it's like a bylaw. Like you have to wear one. It's not an option.
So, and that's what it was for us until not so long ago. There were still people that weren't, or there were people that were trying to pull the shirt over their, like trying to get away with stuff. For the most part, it's been fairly compliant. I think at least around here, the big issue, and as far as like having like, I say somewhat because I wouldn't fancy myself like a learned man of science, but there's a lot of comorbidities here. So we have a lot of people with CHF, COPD, diabetes, you know what I mean? Like all those other factors that like COVID by itself sucks. It's really bad. Obviously, respiratory situations are tough, but when you couple that with things like, high body weight, high cholesterol, like I said, all those other things that make people unhealthy, I think that hit home for a lot of people because there's a lot of, there's a pretty large elder community, especially around here, because it's like though it's a small town, a lot of people that live here have lived here for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I think largely it's been pretty compliant, but there were times like early on, my wife went to the Target nearby, Target of all places, which I feel like that's probably like if you were to pick like a Democrat sponsored store, I feel like that would be like the bluest red store you could find around. There was a little like I don't know if you call them like a gang or whatever, but the little tussle people going through, like, take your masks off, it's a conspiracy. And they're like, going through as a herd through the store, telling people it's all fake and stuff. But I feel like enough people that had somebody at home that was, I guess what you call like immunocompromised. There were enough of those stories that got out that person got sick or something happened to that person, that people started to get pretty compliant. And honestly, I've always been of the mind, like you see people online complaining about, oh, why are you wearing your mask in your car? Like, I can fuck where you wear it. I really don't. Like, you're grown. Like, I do whatever the fuck I want in my car. I suggest you do the same. Like, I always wore it probably to a point of being a little overcautious, just because of, like I said, the baby and not a lot of information about like what happens to little ones. And I know I would feel like absolute dog shit if I brought it home. And, because largely I did the shopping, I did the, taking out the trash, and I have to go to work every day, all those kind of things. I don't know that I could look at myself the same knowing that I brought it home, because I was the lifeline to, shore or whatever you want to call it. So I wore it. I was 100% compliant myself, except for a couple occasions. But as far as in the area, largely compliant. There were some people, as far as that I work with, that, like you said, it's a conspiracy, it's the pandemic, and all this kind of thing. They're testing our behavior to see if we can handle isolation, and there was all kinds of like conspiracy stuff. I don't know. I just know there was people that I loved that I didn't want to get sick, and there were people that I had coworkers that loved their family members and didn't want them to get sick because they're various degrees of immunocompromised. So like I said, largely compliant. And I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, the reason you're on is not to talk about pandemic and COVID, but all very interesting in the dynamics of our two countries and how they handle it. You mentioned it, the Unusual Buddah,
Yes.
is, your other project. And I find that's why I wanted to have you on, because that's so fascinating.
It's way cooler than it sounds.
It's funny because you mentioned you're a firefighter, which is very macho, right? Like, that's a very manly job. We're lifting and risking your life, and
pick things
you
up,
have
put
the
them
Unusual
down.
Buddah, which is not necessarily not manly, but that's very like, in perception, it's very zen, it's very introspective. What is it for one, and how did you get into this thing of starting it?
So the Unusual Buddah is it's a website I made probably about 8 years ago. We're getting right about there now. I've always been interested in philosophy and those kind of things, but I've never been interested in the pitches. Like Jack Kornfield is a great author. He's world renowned. I don't know of too many people that do what I do that you could mention his name and them not know him. I just don't like the way he does things. I don't like the sing-songy voices. I don't like. I don't want to say it's soft, because picture myself as a manly man. Before I was a firefighter, I was a mechanic. So I've had like a lot of blue collar tough guy type background experience. But though I myself am very soft and very gentle, but I just never liked the pitch. I never liked how they were doing it. I never liked what it was. So I was into my first experience with meditation was when I was 17. And I was into it then. I picked it back up when I was 24. So obviously there's a bit of a gap there. But again, I noticed myself as I climbed into it further into the philosophies of Buddhism and things like that, I was getting like, I'm a pretty fun person. I like to make jokes. I like to, I'm a people person. I noticed myself getting drier and more aloof, I guess. And that wasn't me. So I, took a step back. I kind of examined what I was doing. I actually, the first page I made, the first public presence I made doing this was, I can't believe it's not Buddha. And the idea was to make jokes so that I could deflate my own ego, so that I could kind of, I think the British have a phrase called, take the piss out of it. That was kind of the thing, is I wanted to stop making it so serious. Because the more I looked online, and I'm more into Facebook groups. I would rather, even if it's online, I would rather have a conversation with you than to Google it. You know what I mean? I would rather I learn better that way with the human dynamic on the other side. So the idea was to sit down and you know, talk to people and find people that were, you know, maybe in my position or maybe a little further along, so I could learn and, you know, appreciate Buddhism and the philosophy therein. And a lot of people are really douchey about it, like really painfully like hurtful to new people, like because you're mad at me because I don't know how to make my keyboard make Sanskrit. Like I don't understand how you could do that. This philosophy, even if you follow it to 1% of what it is, that is like the antithesis of it. And here you are, you know, you're berating somebody because they didn't have enough syllables to the word or whatever. So that's where I started with, you know, making jokes about meditation. And then I tried to keep that one a little bit, I guess, PG. And then I was having the issue of that also wasn't me. So then I started doing the Unusual Buddah, and that one's a little bit more unhinged. We say very naughty F words all the time. You know, there's an emphasis on simplicity, but also on not denying who you are. I feel like I said, I swear because that's how I communicate. Like that's just a part of my person. I wouldn't, you know, if I was with your family or something like that, I would probably try and tone it down if you know, if you asked or you know, even without you asking. But by and large, if left to my own devices, I'm going to swear. I'm going to, you know, it's just kind of how I communicate. And but yeah, that's mainly the idea of the Unusual Buddah, is to get people to be exposed to meditation in a very simple, very fun way, less judgment, and just trying to sort of deflate the, I guess, spiritual based ego that kind of tends to come with this stuff. I try to keep it very, you know, free of the woo woo kind of thing. But obviously, you know, when you're in Rome, you kind of got to do as the Romans do. But largely, I just wanted to take it and make it make sense, and make it make sense to people that were usually at the fringes, because I had a lot of friends that were into philosophy and those kind of things, but nobody likes those, you know, now we will sit gently in a field, you know what I mean? Those kind of, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's how you're, you know, how you dig it and the relaxation of it, that's great. But not everybody's going to get that. Not everybody's going to be able to work in that. And that was the idea, was to, one, make it funny, two, make it relatable, and three, just to have fun with it. And I think that's sort of the hub around it all. You and I actually met recently because I don't want to say because, but after I had switched all my Twitter stuff to my personal self, because I was noticing I was boxing myself in with putting, you know, the logo on everything, you know, because sometimes I do like to talk about other things, but you know, it was cool to like talk to a person and have my avatar be a person, which I hadn't had that before on Twitter. So, but yeah, largely that is the journey, the purpose, what I'm trying to do. It's basically like every man's meditation. I don't mean man to exclude women. I mean every person's meditation course, or meditation effort, because I think there is value in this for everybody, not just, I don't know if there's a stereotype in Canada, but here in America, the stereotype is usually that the Buddhism is called the middle path. Generally, they call it the phrase, Anne Gleig actually coined it, called the upper middle path. So usually people that are a little bit more affluent, or, you know, richer folk can get this more so. And that's another thing I'm trying to bring it down to everybody's level with, again, jokes and humor and memes and things like that.
What I love about this is, even when I asked the question, I said that it gives the perception of like that Zen, that very much grounded, like I thinking of, you know, the monk in the Tibetan mountains, like that's the perception of Buddhism. Whereas, you know, you're presenting, and why I love it so much is I love when people don't like just go into the boxes, you know what I mean? Like, whereas like I'm a mental health advocate and speaker, so I talk about some serious shit in my life in general. But I'm like, that's not all who I am. And I don't want to present myself in a way that, you know, I'm always just sitting there depressed and thinking.
Yeah, you're not defined by it. You've been through it, you're not defined by it. Yeah.
I like to make jokes. I like to joke about being single, like all that different stuff.
Yeah.
Would you say, like, I know the Unusual Buddah, but like, are you like, in terms of like the actual religion, like, are you, I don't know if there's like a confirmation like in Catholicism or anything, but like, or is it just like more of like a, just like an enjoyment type thing and it just benefits your
So
life?
officially speaking, there is like you take ordination, and it's a very there's it's a very ritualized process, and you go and you get your robes and you hand them to your teacher, and your teacher hands them back to you, and you are ordained. That's if you want to become like an actual monk and you want to live on the premises and things like that. I'm not that, obviously. I did attend classes. There's a temple not too far from where I live, and they're a Theravada temple, and that is like the Buddhist equivalent of like Orthodox. Like they're like the old school, original school of Buddhism. You can be a lay follower. You can take, and that's just like means like regular people, and you can take an ordination of that kind. I did not, mainly because my experience there probably wasn't the greatest. The monk I worked with was fantastic, but he and I both parted ways, and he said, when I go, don't come back. And I was like, why? He said, well, because they've been after your money this entire time. I was taking classes with him once, if not twice a week for 2 years. And he said, they have been after me to get your money since you started here. He's like, don't, and it wasn't like I was a cheapskate. I brought like food. He would always tell me to bring things to support people. So I bring like food, toothbrush, toilet paper, like normal food, people stuff, toiletries and those kind of things. And he would, that was always, he would always encourage that and those kind of things. But he said they were largely after the money. So I never took any real, he never put any emphasis on it. So I don't have like any, you might see a lot of people online that have like a cool Zen name, or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have that. I didn't, like I said, never took ordination. Largely everything I know about Buddhism and the philosophy of it has been through like an undisciplined dive into it. You know what I mean? So when I looked into it, I read into it, I got the books, I just dove in, and like I said, the most undisciplined way you can. So what I usually tell people is I am non-sectarian Buddhist. I don't celebrate, like when Vesak Day was a recent holiday, Buddhist holiday. That was kind of news to me. I don't really celebrate. I don't, I still go to the temple occasionally. It's been a while now because of the kids, but I just don't, I don't get into that aspect. I keep it in more of a, and I say non-sectarian. I wouldn't say secular or non-secular, just because there is an element of Buddhism where people don't believe in any of the mythology, or they call it mythology, but any of the fantastic tales of Buddhism. I'm not quite there. Personally, I do think there's, at least at minimum, there's value in a lot of these miraculous stories, but I don't focus on them, because at the end of the day, whatever the Buddha did to stop an elephant that was going to smash him, that doesn't really have a lot of pertinence to me now. You know what I mean? Other than the value of the story or those kind of things, those things don't really affect me. So yes, I'm Buddhist, but like I said, I would call it non-sectarian, and I kind of like to meander through the traditions because I find a lot of value in each of them. And my teacher was actually very supportive of that kind of mentality. He used to tell me, and the more I tell people the little euphemisms he gave me, the more I find they're like from things. But he would tell me that Buddhism as a whole is like a tree. And some people find value in the bark, and some people find value in the branches and the leaves and the various components of the tree. But it doesn't matter. It's the same tree. And that's what he used to say. And he equated like the different schools of Buddhism to the same thing, because largely, and this was a really cool aspect of Buddhism, is if you are, Pure Land Buddhist, you're just as welcome at a Theravada temple as anyone else. So they don't, I'm sure it happens in places and things like that, but they don't, the sects are not so rigid, or it's not like a gang fight when you have two different groups show up or whatever. You don't have to do the snapping, knife fights and stuff, all that. So they're more welcoming across the groups. And like I said, I just don't, I don't get into the individual sects. I find value in all of it.
Yeah, it's more of like the philosophy of the religion and everything like that, rather than the actual practice. At its core, I mean, you could go probably in a million different ways with this, but like, Cole's notes, what is Buddhism, because I think a lot of people generalize it in a
Yeah.
sort of, like I said, that monk in the temple, like the meditation, like what is, but like what is the actual, like what are some of the things it preaches, it follows, it practices?
So largely the biggest thing that people don't understand about Buddhism is, yes, there are monastics and things like that, but largely, it can't expand if there's only a monk community. You know what I mean? There's only so far just the power of the word is going to spread the thing. But as far as like tenets that Buddhism follows, the one that really blew my mind and I think encapsulates it well is the Four Noble Truths. The first one being the universality of suffering. So whether it is to whatever degree, wherever your station in life, if you are born the poorest of the poor or the richest of the rich, suffering is universal. We all know that, and a lot of the times they'll use different wording. This world that we live in is called samsara. This world that's subject to birth and death and those kind of things, which bring on suffering. But that is something that blew my mind personally, because the universality of it, I never really thought of that when I was, again, I picked this stuff up initially when I was 17, is that, and again, this could just be a self-absorbed teenager, but you never really thought about that Ryan has his own world and his own concerns and his own pains and his own everything. And so does Jim, and so does, Tina, and so does Sally, and all these people all have their own, they all know it. We all know what suffering is. And again, who knows to what degree? Maybe I have not suffered 0.1% of what you have, but nonetheless, I know what that feels like. And that's one of the things that first, like, really, kind of took me back, like, wow, like how dense am I? I never really thought of that my suffering is not the only suffering, that it's everybody's got suffering. And again, this is like the intro teaching to Buddhism, but the second noble truth is that we suffer because we desire. And a lot of people take that to mean that, Buddhism, you have to like be this like formless, shapeless piece of crap and just float through life. And it's not at all the case. What they're saying is, or what the Buddha was saying, is that if you want things to be different than they are or than they can be, you'll cause your own pain. So, if I want, I want to be rich and famous. If that's what I want, one, it's difficult to get there. Two, it's difficult to maintain once people, how many movie stars have you seen that like fall off or whatever like that? That is an amount of suffering. That is a difficult problem you are bringing on yourself. So, not only are you the jailer, but you're also the person in the jail. You've created this situation for yourself that is painful. And like I said, people try to make it seem so, defined as suffering is equivalent to want. And there are good wants. There are things that are neutral to desire for. Desire itself is ambivalent, but people, that's another one of those like misnomers people make, like, it's okay to be hungry. Like I'm hungry, I desire to eat. But you don't have to sit there and go like, oh man, we're going to have like pepperoni pizza. We're going to have, it's going to have basil on the crust, or, you know what I mean? Like very exacting and specific ways, because when you want for very exact and specific things or circumstances, you're actually setting yourself up to be disappointed, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if back to the pizza analogy, if I want my pizza's got to be just so, and it's got to have the right kind of sauce, and it's got to have the, I like the stuffed crust pizza. And then when you get there, and if it's not all of those 11 things that you desired, well, then it's like, oh man, it's not stuffed crust. It's not, there's no dip in sauce. It's bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's that element that we have set this up for ourselves because we wanted it a very exact way. There's nothing wrong with being specific in what you want. Just know that that is what brings you to that point of things being deficient for you.
I'm not trying to interrupt here, and we'll get to those other two, but that reminds me, and I mentioned about joking about being single, like that reminds me of dating right now. That we have this paradox of choice of like so many things that we desire such specificness in a partner, and if
Yeah.
anybody doesn't match that exact thing that we're looking for, we pass it off to the side, even though they could have
Exactly.
been great for us. We could have been a great match. We could have been anything. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, he's everything, but he's got red hair and not brown hair, and it's got to be
Yeah.
brown hair and
He's
blue
5'9",
eyes.
he's not 6'4",
Exactly.
like whatever. Yeah.
And that we end up hurting and struggling and, becoming depressed or anxious or have no faith in dating because we put these desires so specifically
on a pedestal.
And it's almost impossible to find that match.
Yeah. And that's
exactly what I thought of.
That's awesome. And that's a good analogy. And it's funny because it's different for each person. It's one of the things I like to tell people about Buddhism is that Buddhism recognizes that all things are possible, that like the entire, like anything you can think, that shit could happen at any time. The only problem is it's not likely. You know what I mean? So like, is flight possible? Sure. But like, it's not very likely that I'm going to go outside and just like, ascend into the sky. It's just not likely. And that's the thing, is we are wanting things to be different than they could possibly be in their nature, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, flight is not something I can do without a machine or without, like hot air balloon or something. That's not something that is possible for me to do. Down to like talking about relationships. Another point of suffering is that we want to be connected with one another and we never want to separate. The nature of everything is impermanence. This relationship is going to end, just like this interview is going to end, just like this camera I'm talking to you on is going to eventually break down. Phones, devices, relationships, people, everything has to end. And to want it to be different than that is to basically heap the suffering onto yourself. That's the problem, is we tend to desire things that are outside of their nature, if that makes sense. So it never could be that for you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what Buddhism is. Buddhism is trying to acknowledge the reality of the situation or of the circumstances or whatever the case may be, that you got to be realistic, I guess, without being, I don't want to say it's not negative, because a lot of people try to take it into a negative place, because there's also like the 5 precepts, the things you don't do, this stuff, kind of like commandments sort of. People try to paint it all in a negative picture, and it's really not. There's really I guess you have to look at the flip side of the coin there, but
be realistic and pragmatic as opposed to being pessimistic, acknowledging that, like you said, like everything comes to an end.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not sitting there being like, oh, everything's going to end and now there's no point.
Exactly. And that's the problem, is a lot of people try to take it to that superlative degree that it's just not even meant that way. Like one of my favorite stories, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's I think he's Thai. No, he's Laotian, I think. But anyway, there's a writer, damn it, no, it's Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Chah talks to a lot of famous people. He actually taught Jack Kornfield and gave him his ordination and all those things. But he has an analogy of a cup. And he's like, this cup is my favorite cup. And I look at it and I like the way the light hits it, and it's beautiful. And it fits my hands just nice, and I can drink from it. It's a wonderful cup. But one day I set the cup on the edge of the table and I knock it off with my elbow. And, depending on how attached I am to that cup, that could be a devastating moment for me. And that's what he's saying is he initially gets this cup knowing that no matter how much he loves it, someday he's going to have to separate with it, whether he dies or whether he, can no longer lift it, or whether he gives it to a friend or it falls off the table. From the moment he got it, dictated that there would be a moment he would be without. And that is kind of the idea, is that, like you said, is to knowing that this relationship has like a termination point, a point that it's going to end. Why not appreciate it? Why not admire it in the sunlight and look at the great picture and all those things? Why not truly appreciate it while you have it? Just know that someday you won't. And because it's, if we really get down to it, it's not really yours. You know what I mean? In the universal sense, I guess.
What were those? So we covered the 2.
Yeah, so that's
already
that's
are
2.
like,
yeah. So the universality of suffering, desire as cause, and then it kind of makes sense if you eliminate your desire, or and we've already kind of talked about that a little bit, if you sort of reframe your desires, you can actually live a very pleasant life. Humanity is this world, depending on how in depth you want to get with Buddhism, there's there's a whole cosmos, there's hells, there's heavens, there's all kinds of stuff in between. A lot of it's an alliteration for, or I should say an illustration for life here and now. But the third noble truth is to reframe your desire, and that will help you reframe your suffering and how you feel about everything. And that was like that analogy with the cup. That's kind of what you're trying to do, is you're trying to reframe how you look at things based on what you know about impermanence and selflessness and those kind of concepts. I mean, there's a lot there. Oh man, I wish I could sit down, I could send you links to things and things that I've made and stuff like that, because a lot of it's very on its surface it seems very complex, but it's fairly simplistic once you break into it. And the fourth one is always the one I it's almost like a sales pitch where it drags you further in, because the fourth one is that the fourth noble truth is that to escape from suffering, to escape from the wheel of continued rebirth, you follow the eightfold noble path, which is a whole nother set of I don't want to say rules, but another set of ideals to follow and use. And it's right concentration, right speech, right livelihood, so it's almost like sort of like commandments a little bit. But basically it's just different avenues and ways to look at your life to sort of improve yourself, to make yourself more inclined towards enlightenment, or those kind of enlightened behaviors. So that was the one where I'd have to sit down, I'd have to have it in front of me, because if I sit down and try and do it off memory, it's going to be embarrassing.
No, but there's a lot to be said about that whether you choose to practice in the Buddhist religion or you choose to, study the philosophy of it, really without knowing Buddhism like you do, or even really knowing it before outside of like a few things, it resonated with me so much, because, this whole journey I've been on for the last year, especially, which I talk about on this podcast all the time. It's just living my life in a lot simpler of terms, and without actually knowing it, like practicing some of those things where, like,
yeah, absolutely,
like a dumb cliche, not a dumb cliche, but just like a cliche of, it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Like things like that, just giving myself, full-heartedly, unapologetically, and my energy out there, knowing that I might suffer from it, but knowing that my life will be a lot better for it because I've done those things, and not reserved myself from it because I was afraid of the suffering.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things I love about Buddhism, is it's not about superhumanity. It's not about the things you see, like I'm going to meditate, I'm going to levitate, and I'm going to walk through walls and all these, like, you hear miraculous things, and I feel like there is some of that out there. I'm sure every legend has a drop of truth in it, but largely it's about living out this human life in as full a way as you can. As far as like, especially when I talk to like meditation students, feeling out an experience, yes, you are sad, and that has a value. It draws you away from your center line. But what is it at its edges? What is it like in circumference? What is it like in depth? What is it like in breadth? What is it, you know what I mean? Like, as far as the entirety of your experience, that is what the Buddha taught, was to examine all of it, is that it's all there for you to look at, it's all there for you to observe, and it's all there for you to learn from. And the largest thing that I take away from it is to get off of autopilot, to get off of that ho-hum, like you said, you're going to feel suffering. Suffering sucks, and pain, whether it's romantic or physical or whatever the case is, it hurts and it's awful. But at the same time, if it was all pleasant all the time, it wouldn't have any context. It wouldn't make any sense. So, one of those, another saying I like to use is the clouds frame the sky. if the sky was always blue all the time, it wouldn't really have any point of reference. You know what I mean? If there was only sky, it would just be just all blue and it would just be taken for granted. But the fact that there are clouds, or there is weather, or there are rainy days, or those kind of things, the fact that there is some kind of difference, it gives you perspective. And like I said, it's no, we don't want to wallow in the negative, and we don't want to live in awful mind states, but they are all there for a reason, and they're all there for us to examine. And like I said, to just really take use of this full human life to experience and learn and grow.
Yeah, I was having a really deep day on Thursday, and I went for a walk, and I just was like recording some thoughts for TikTok for some stuff, but also just as like a live journal type
Nice.
Exercise. But
like old school vlogging.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
I was talking about that love loss, and not just talking about romantic love, but talking about loving your parents, loving a sibling, loving your dog, loving yourself, right? That we have loving grief, and grief is perhaps one of the, if not the worst human experience you can have, right? Like heartbreak is awful and actually can kill you in some cases. Whereas
broken
love,
heart syndrome. Yep.
Yeah, right. But whereas love is this beautiful, wonderful feeling where it seems like nothing else in this world really matters, because you're just so full. You're just, so much joy. But without the two, that if all you experienced it, like and it goes, and you hear this all the time, that you don't appreciate it because it's always around. Whereas if
it gets taken for granted. Exactly.
Yeah. And if you lose it, like, it's the same thing. And if all you did was feel loss, well, there wouldn't be much point of living. But the reason for living, to me, is to experience that love, whatever that love is for. But that's what makes everything worth willing. But you need the yin and the yang. You need the two to that's
like we talked about earlier. That's why Buddhism is called the middle path. And a lot of people, it's another misnomer. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it's not hot, it's not cold. It's the analogy is actually supposed to be, and this is again from what I've heard, I wasn't there, but the idea was more like when you walk down a path in places like India, where the Buddha would have walked all the time, the middle path, the middle of the road was actually the crown. And if you look, like some roads still do it now for drainage. So you're avoiding the trouble on the left, the ditch, and you're avoiding the trouble on the right, which is, another ditch. And you're taking the middle because that's the high ground across two. So you're not too far into suffering. You're not too far into self-indulgence. You're right in the middle. There's a healthy ground in the middle. It's compromise, not in that compromise is this lukewarm lack of commitment, but compromise in that there's not a lot that's good for me all the way over here in self-indulgence, and there's not a lot that's good for me all the way over here in self-affliction. But somewhere in the middle, there's a healthy, some people call it discipline. You can maintain a healthy relationship with the things on the sides without having to, again, go all in on, again, weekend benders to Vegas are not going to help you become a better human being. And, beating yourself with whips and chains and those kind of things, self-affliction, that's not going to help you either. There's somewhere in the middle. And I think that's one of the mentalities I try to take from Buddhism into just about everything, is there has to be, like you said, there has to be some sort of, contrasting point. You know what I mean? Like it has to be there or it loses context. And that's, I think, one of the things that Buddhism explores that most other faiths don't, is that, there is a bad, but there has to be, you know what I mean? Or else the good would not make any sense, or there'd be no context. There'd be no purpose to it. Like you said, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that, that the coin has two sides and there's a reason for it. You know what I mean?
Do you think this could be applied in a way to the way our politics is kind of run right now? When I think about what social media and I mean, I don't have to tell you Donald Trump and everything that's kind of happened in the last decade, if not longer, where things are so polarized in so many cases, in so many different disciplines, that, You know, well, I am I am left, I am liberal. I believe in a lot of those ideals. There's still things where I'm like, I can't be all the way quote unquote left because, sometimes it just gets a little too chaotic for me. Do you think, because a lot of people don't want you to be in the middle right now, in a lot of cases, you know what I mean? And that's what
Yeah.
I'm wondering, if this can somehow be applied, because right now being evil means if you're not evil, if being in the middle kind of puts you in this like neutral status,
You're almost compliant. Yeah.
which people
Yeah.
hate on both
Yeah.
sides. They're like, either like you're with me or against me, right? There's always that
Yeah.
thing. But then if you're walking the middle path, especially when it comes to politics, like, I don't know, is that like a philosophy you think about?
And this is the part about doing the Unusual Buddha that's been, I think I've learned a lot about myself through this, is I am a big fan of like the marketing aspect. And as far as, because I loved as a kid, we only had 1 year of it in high school with sociology. I loved seeing people behavior, like dynamics in a group. And it's fascinating to me to see how, we're all born the same. Obviously it's a school, so there's rich kids, there's poor kids, but, similar circumstances, there's a swing, but how we all shake out into these little groups and cliques, and there's the goth kids and the jocks and the whatever everybody has. I was always really fascinated with that, and I feel like with the Unusual Buddha, I've been able to see that on a much grander scale as far as like behavior at mass. I think my opinion with politics, with as far as like nasty comments online, those kind of things. I feel like what usually happens is we have the 2% of extremes on either end, and they're the loud ones. They're the ones that can yell and do the Karen shit at the stores and throw things and fist fight and those sort of things over toilet paper. And then there's the rest of us that are in between that are kind of forced to suffer. I feel like it has to be a spectrum. There can't be, especially in the United States, I feel like the fact that we're playing this game of left and right is why it sucks, is why we're allowing people to, I mean, I try not to get political because it's very, like you said, it's very polarizing. It tends to get people upset in either direction. And if I lose followers, I lose followers. I'm not playing a game in any of this. I feel like there's a lot of times that we spend too much time in left and right. And I'm not saying that to be like libertarian or, whatever else, but like there's things of the Democrat mindset that work well. There's things of the Republican mindset that work well. But to say that one side has the market cornered on good ideas is just short-sighted, is in my mind foolish. There's a lot of things that I don't know if you know this about at least firefighters that I've been exposed to. Though we have a union and we do Democrat things, a lot of them are super Republican. So I spend a lot of time being the odd man out because I'm not quite as red as they are. But there are plenty of places I go to. I'm like, hey, yo, what about this and that? And they're like, whoa, you're a little too Republican to be here. So there is that I have kind of that odd man out syndrome myself. But like for instance, I one of the things I wanted to learn for personal development this year is like how stocks work and how cryptocurrency works and those kind of things, because school never taught me any of that stuff because some of it didn't even exist. But I just didn't know how money worked, so I wanted to learn that. And I bought into one of was AMC, and AMC had this big rocket ride, and everyone's like, woo, and so I finally sold, and I put $20 in, and it's worth like 100 and something now. So it's not like you know what I mean? Like I didn't do like don't get me wrong, like on paper that's freaking awesome, but it's not like I'm not. It's not fuck you money. You know what I mean? It's
the Dogecoin guy who invested all his life savings.
Yeah. And I'm sure he wants to punch Elon in the mouth too. We can have that talk as well if you want. How I want to fight him. But anyway, like as far as the Republican mindset, like I took the money and I sold it because I didn't want to play that game anymore. I was tired of watching the roller coaster. So I took it and I'm going to do something else with it. And one of my friends, who's a firefighter, he said, hey, all of the the government thanks you for funding a stimulus check. And I'm like, that's a really fucked up thing to say to somebody, because I don't know, like when the first stimulus check came out, like that kept me from starving. Like that kept me feeding my kids. Like I'm okay with that. Like you can, like I don't, as weird as it may sound, like I'm not going to turn down the money because it's, it's stuff I can use to feed mine, but I don't need all of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm okay with, giving up a couple bucks so that, so my neighbor can eat, or, my friend's kid can, go to his special ed class, or, you know what I mean? Like I don't understand that mindset. And that seems to be one of those things where, these polarizing topics, like one thing I don't like is we've created a situation where if you don't agree with me, you are evil. We've created that good guy, bad guy syndrome, and nobody is all good and nobody is all bad. And that's another concept that I don't even think you could really associate it to Buddhism. I think I actually heard it on TikTok, but is letting go of that concept that I'm the good guy, and that you're, if you disagree, you're the bad guy, because that actually gets in the way of being the good guy. You know what I mean? The fact that I see myself as the good guy seems to make any dissenting opinion an attack on what is good and what is right. So in fact, you're actually more combative, you're more evil, I don't want to say evil, but you know what I mean? You're more in that vein of defending yourself when it's not really necessary. It's not that, don't get me wrong, like there is evil in the world. I do feel like there are evil things, there are evil actions, there are evil people, there are people who are complicit in evil things. But for the most part, most of us, just because you don't see exactly eye to eye on me, with me on a topic, doesn't mean we can't be friends. Doesn't mean we can't, agree to disagree, kind of thing. Like don't get me wrong, there are some non-negotiables out there as well.
Exactly.
But by and large, I think we're spending so much time making everything like an ultimatum. You know what I mean? You're either on this table or you're at that table with the goths, and you're not cool like us jocks, or you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's the mentality. We're going right back to high school. We're going right back to these separate dynamics of where were your parents born, how much they make, and all these other kind of things. I feel like we're allowing bullshit reasons to subdivide us in ways that are counterproductive for everybody.
Yeah, for me it's it's the party systems.
I agree.
I only have the choice. Well, in Canada, we have two main ones, like a third one's kind of in there, and a fourth one that doesn't really do anything. In Quebec, there's even a fifth one, but in America, like you really have two. And like, so
there's two. There was
I know you have the libertarians. You have the
there's libertarian. There was like the Tea Party, but that got absorbed. There was
when I only have the choice. So I always say, like, if you're racist, like that's an ultimatum for me, right? Context is important.
Exactly. That is a classic point. We cannot be friends if you are on that side. Like that is something I agree. Like,
but if you are small government, I can like agree with some of those opinions on for small government. But if you're small government, then you only have the choice to vote for Republican. Like if that's something that's very important to you.
Yeah.
In Canada, you'd be conservative. So it's like, okay, well, that's really important to me. So I had to vote Republican, and then immediately, oh, you're racist, you're this, you're that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, like I just don't believe in big government. I'd rather make the choices for myself. That doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah. It's funny.
I can agree with.
Yeah. It's funny you actually bring that up, because in this most recent election, there were some things, shoot me now. There were some things that Donald Trump did that I didn't necessarily find evil. But there was one issue that came down to the vote that was Donald Trump wanted to cut aid for autism benefits. And I was in the middle of a process last year. So my son, he's my 6-year-old, he's autistic, and he had a lot of tooth decay, and it's impossible to find a dentist for one, kids, and then 2 in the autism specialization. So I made an appointment probably last May. Basically, it took like 11 months to get his teeth fixed, and to try and apply for aid, and to try and get him ready for school, and to try and get all these things going all at once. It took forever. And what it came down to for me was that Biden was going to the Democrat ticket was going to extend and maybe even broaden some of the benefits for people that have special needs. Whereas Trump and everything he was doing, they were going to start cutting it. They were actually looking at a point where they were going to give insurance companies the ability, and this is through Autism Speak. So this may not be 100%, like I'm not a advocate for any specific person, but this is information as I got it from the people I got it from. They were saying that they were going to cut autism benefits and also give insurance companies the ability to say it's not a pre-existing condition. Ooh. And I'm like, what in the French fried fuck are you talking about? That makes no sense. What could I have done to him or for him to make this better or worse? And I have a 3-year-old that's also autistic, and so, I don't know if you like before the COVID anti-vax thing, there was the anti-vax in general here because like Jenny McCarthy apparently made her kid a superhero or whatever. Never get your scientific information from her or anyway. But there was that sentiment. So my 6-year-old is entirely on his shot schedule. My 3-year-old is not, because he had underlying kidney issues and stuff as a kid. So they have a similar condition. They're at different places on the spectrum, but they're, you know what I mean? Like they still both need help. They're going to both need help probably for their entire lives. And like you said, like that was the issue for me. Like I don't care about the economy, about raised fuel prices, about it, whatever the fuck else. I don't care, because my son needs to live in a world where he's going to have somebody to look out for him long after I'm dead. You know what I mean? Like there's probably going to be a good delta there between when Jimbo ends and my son's name is Norman. When Norman continues on, there's going to be a time frame in there where he's going to need somebody, and to ignore that or to say that it's his fault some way or my fault some way, it doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, like you said, like there are some things that I agreed with that were, I guess on the conservative side. That was the one that came down to me, and a lot of guys in the firehouses and stuff wanted to argue with me and like, you're a commie and those kind of things. And I'm like, fuck it then, I'm a commie. Like, so what? Like, that's like, I'm sorry if that, like I said, being complicit in the tax on selling my stock, like, I don't care. Like, there's some things that are necessary. There are some things that the government is needed for. Like, you have to have that. And again, I think that's one of those middle path mindsets that all this side is not necessarily good and all that side is not necessarily good, but you can kind of grab the good from both and kind of make something altogether different. And I think that's a problem we're in, is we're looking at each and every issue that if you're not on my side, you're evil. And that is the problem. And another thing, if we really want to break into my mindset on politics, I think a lot of it comes down to, why the fuck do we have somebody who is 90 some years old dictating policy? Like, when, I don't know if you remember, like the whole shenanigans over, like, Mitch McConnell wanted to give us $600 for our, stimulus to survive off of for like 6 months.
Yeah, I fucking hate that guy.
Yeah, dude, he looks like a fucking turtle though, for real. Like, can we just admit that?
Yeah.
But anyway, not to, even if I just heard him, this is separate and different from his looks. Like, you are so out of touch with what it means to be here. And as somebody who has perpetually been, lower, I don't even know if I could be considered breaking into middle class, but, you're just so fucking out of touch. And I'm sorry, in my mind, if you have come to serve the government or serve the people and you have not achieved anything of note in the first decade or the first 2 terms you've been there, what are you going to do with 60 years? Like, you're there, you're riding the system. I don't understand why we just allow that. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you are obviously not effectively serving the purpose. Why are you here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a whole discussion.
Yeah, that's
in itself about power and corruption and everything, and the superiority complex of everybody. But I do want to transition a bit, because I want to touch on meditation before the end of the conversation. And I want to know where that fits in with Buddhism and why that's an important component. Meditation is something I find fascinating. It's not something I've tried, but I know it takes practice. I just haven't got into yet. But like, I have a friend who's into it, and she can bring herself to orgasm by meditating. And
lucky,
it's like,
I want to do that.
Shit. You know, like
If I did that, I wouldn't be able to leave my house like,
just all the time.
There wouldn't be a reason. There wouldn't be a reason. I would just go get snacks and hang out in my room.
I am curious about, you know, this practice, and you teach it now, and you have a certification. I saw you talking about.
Yeah.
Like, where does this fit in with Buddhism, and where does this fit in with you personally in your life, and what has it brought to you?
So meditation traditionally was, it's a practice that's been around as long as people. My journeys through Google, like I said, everything I do is an undisciplined journey into a topic. And the oldest recorded instance of it that I could find is from about 10,000 BC, and it was from the Indus River Valley people. And it was a depiction of somebody sitting in the traditional, legs crossed, meditative, stereotypical pose. And, so it's been around long before the Buddha. The Buddha, if you look historically, he's lived around 500 BC-ish or BCE, however you want to relate that. So it's not something he invented. It's not something he came up with. It's something that people have been doing for a very long time. The main purpose of meditation, and what I usually tell people in my classes, is that meditation is, to quote Thich Nhat Hanh, is an intimate experience with the present moment. That is what we're after. So a lot of times, and you will hear this analogy given, and it's probably credited to the wrong person all the time. I've heard Lao Tzu credited to have said it. I've heard the Buddha. I've heard Osho. But if you think about it, it makes sense overall. Is that if you spend too much time looking backward on past decisions, on past situations, that generally equates to depression. Too much time looking back. You're very focused in retrospect. If you spend too much time looking forward, then that's when you bridge into anxieties. You're worried about the things that have not yet come, or you're worried about the things that have passed. But you're denying this whole big swath of things right now. And that's what meditation is to try and get to, you're basically using your brain to examine the present moment as it happens to you. Some people think you have to sit down with your legs crossed and, the full lotus position. I'm gonna tell you now, I'm 35 years old. I've been practicing meditation, like I said, since I was 24. I could not lotus to save my fucking life. You could, if it was Jim lotus or I'm shooting you, you better just count that bullet as gone, because I can't do it. I don't bend that way. I'm not flexible like that. Even the monk that I learned from, we spent more time meditating in a chair than I think I've ever seen anybody, like I ever thought was possible. So that's not it either. But like I said, it's more about what you do with your mind than it is about the poses or the specific objects of meditation or those kind of things. One of the eightfold path, like we were talking about earlier, without breaking into a whole nother, we could probably have like a whole thing about this. But it's right concentration. That's one of the things. And right, not in the sense of right or wrong, but right is in the sense of this is what somebody, a very accomplished person, a very noble person would do. That's more what they mean by right. When you sit down and you examine the present moment and you examine, what's going on with yourself, like I said, that's when you would do those things like we were talking about with your suffering or any emotional state, where you're examining the edges of it, like how deep is it, how long is it, all those kind of things. That is actually sticking with the present moment, because you're examining something that's happening now. You're not examining something that, a mistake you accidentally called the teacher mom in third grade. You told the waiter you too when they said have a good meal, those kind of things. You're not worried about those kind of things. You're in the present moment as it's happening, as it's flowing, which is a very big part of Buddhism in general, because like I said, we tend to, that's how we avoid delusion. That's another big concept in Buddhism, is avoiding delusion. And usually when we look too far back or too far forward in our own little timeline and mindset, we're usually embellishing it. You know what I mean? Like the times that happened in the past are usually not as bad as we've built them up to be, especially not when you're laying in bed at 3 a.m. and it pops into your head. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Well, it probably wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? Or, you're worried about the, whatever, you have a presentation due in the end of the week. Well, so is everyone else that's got that presentation. Like, you're not alone. You know what I mean? This is another one of those universality moments. It's everyone's feeling this. You know what I mean?
and sorry not to cut you off, but
No,
I
go ahead.
saw, I think it was on TikTok, it might've been on Twitter, but that like your memory is not a replay of what exactly happened. Your memory is an interpretation of what happened.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I was like, damn.
Yeah, right. Because if you think about it, like none of the things you remember, they're all embellished. They're all, to a superlative degree. They're all the most embarrassing, the most, you know what I mean? They're all like very off the wall or outside of the normal, put it that way. And that's what meditation is about. Is about centering on the present moment, minding the present moment, and seeing what's happening internally, like your internal climate, your internal weather. As far as my personal practice, I with 4 kids, it's tough and shift work schedule. It's hard to have that formal, like avatar-esque sit there, where you sit in some kind of mudra and you have your hands in some cool pose, gang signs or whatever. I don't always get that. So I usually tend to trend towards a mindfulness practice, which is more mobile. So basically, instead of sitting down, and traditionally when you have a seated meditation, it's serenity meditation. Usually you're focused on your breathing and what that feels like. And as thoughts come and go, you allow them to come and go. You don't attach to any of them, but you don't force them out. When you're dealing with mindfulness, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can actually sit down, basically imagine yourself sitting in the center with 5 streams passing by, and you, whatever is most obvious, you pay attention to that at the moment, and you examine it, mentally note it, and then let it go. So you don't attach to it. So so when you're going through your day, I brushed up against something painful, that's feeling. I heard a loud noise in a car, like that's hearing. You know what I mean? So you take in the experience, you mentally note it, and some people will even go as far as noting it. And again, this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but some people will note it as far as it was a sound, and it was pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. You know what I mean? So you can get that far into the weeds, or you can just say hearing, seeing, smelling, and these are your mental notes. You keep them very vanilla, very bland, because it helps you to not attach to them. Because if you're driving by the pizza place and you're like, oh damn, that smells good, man, I really want some mozzarella sticks, well then you're caught up in, you've just created like a desire situation, because when you go home and you're not having mozzarella sticks, you're going to be annoyed. You know what I mean? Just like we were talking about earlier, you've set up this situation to be you're the jailer and the jailed in this situation. And that's what mindfulness is trying to help you break, is trying to help you move through these moments and move through these experiences, while observing them, not on autopilot, but allow you to, pick it up. Okay, that's what that is. All right, cool. Next thing, you know what I mean? Like you can examine it, you can move on, you can go on with your life, and not attach to it. A lot of people think that it has to be centered in the breath, and that's not really the case. Another way that some people will do it, rather than trying to, some people, it depends on temperament, but some people can't pay attention to all the gambit of human experience, because for Buddhism, there's the 5 senses, and then there's the mental aspect, which makes the 6th. So the, thoughts, concepts, symbols, those kind of things are the 6th sense, if you were to add one. Some people like to go the other way and pick one. So I know when I was a mechanic, a big part of my practice was because I didn't have the bandwidth to think of a car and think of what's wrong with it and try to fix it. But I could think of my feet. So when I was walking, my thoughts were always left, right, left, right, left, right. You know what I mean? And that tended to keep me centered in the present moment, no matter how many people were waiting for their oil changes or, alignments or whatever it was. I could, in between those jobs, I could come back to left, right. And that was where it started, breathing. And you know what I'm saying? So it's a very, basically the idea is you're trying to become more objective. That's the whole of meditation. If you were to like pick one word to describe the goal of it, is to become more objective and less subjective to your life experience. Because when we can do that, we're sort of free. You know what I mean? There's a freedom to that. There's a freedom to that perspective. And that's the idea with meditation overall. And that's, like I said, I find mindfulness, and again, a lot of people associate like woo woo to it and all those
Mhm,
kind of
mhm.
things, but it's a very straightforward practice. It's a very practical, like you said, very pragmatic thing. And a lot of people tend to stick with their stigmas of it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that tends to be the problem. But it's the idea overall is to get with the present moment, to get objective, and to just observe. And
Yeah.
that's really the whole of it. I said that's a lot of words to say, such a little thing.
But no, you're right. And even in the mental health, space that I'm in, and the mindfulness and meditation are a big thing, because, it helps give your brain that practice to
Yeah.
bring you into that present moment. And, you say woo woo, and I know there is a lot of woo woo in terms of perception, and especially with the spaces that we're in with like wellness and health and wellness, that, we
Yeah, I don't mean that in
definitely-
derogatory, because a lot of people very proudly carry that
Oh, yeah.
that banner, and I don't mean that way, but I just mean as far as in opposition to pragmaticism.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
But
all I mean.
we've definitely commercialized it in a way that has
Yeah.
given people a perception, but there's rooted science in it. I
For sure.
Last year I had Erin McLeod, who is an Olympic soccer goalkeeper, and her business partner, Dr. Rachel Linville, who has her PhD in studying mindfulness. And we
Right.
talked about the practical use, and we talked about the research use of mindfulness, and like the science in it, and like all that. So it's when people see it on TV or in a movie, they have this one sort of, there's that hippie shit again, like that type of stuff.
Oh, look, he's gonna levitate.
Yeah,
Like,
but in reality, and I'm glad you said it, because I didn't even really know this, that it's not always centered around your breath, and like that's something I thought, but there's those moving parts.
Yeah, so that's just not to get into the weeds, but Buddhism alone actually recognizes, or the Buddha himself named off 40 objects of meditation. So there's a world of things you can focus on. It's just, again, to the temperament, and that's kind of where a teacher comes in, is a temperament, or what might work for you might not work for me. But yeah, like you said, it's a stereotype. We all have come to accept this for whatever reasons, probably TV and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely, it's more than you think.
Well, and that's, I think, the great thing about your Unusual Buddah, that you're putting, a dad with a mustache as a firefighter to this Eastern practice that people, and it shapes their perception of it. I know there were some other things I wanted to talk to you about, but
Absolutely.
I don't want to keep a dad of 4 away for too long. So we'll have to do it again sometime down the road for sure.
Absolutely.
Have one of these life chats, because it's been great. Where can people find you on social media, website, all that stuff to get?
So the website is theunusualbuddha.com. It's basically got all the links there in the top, but I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook's actually the biggest presence where we actually started. On Instagram, I try a bunch of other stuff. I actually been working with, and today is the first day we're actually going to record together, but work on my friend Dwayne Toops.
Another Twitter friend.
He's an awesome guy. He's probably one of my favorite, make-believe friends on the internet. Working with him, we're actually going to record today, but we have a podcast, similar to how you do, say, we use the video for YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So basically everywhere, but the hub is theunusualbuddha.com, and that's sort of the where you can find the latest. I guess that's where I try to keep that up, but as a one-person show trying to spin all the plates, sometimes the articles are outdated, or you know what I mean, so trying to stick with it.
Feel that, and a working dad with a big family, and kudos for you for doing it, because that's a lot of work. But
I appreciate it.
This was a lot of fun. Makes me reflect and really think about things, and that's what I love about these types of conversations. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Me too. Yeah, thank you for having me. And again, if you need anything, or you want to chat about anything, my inbox is open, and let me know.
Beauty, man. I appreciate that.
All right, man. Have a good one. Good talking to you.